In a forest, a red object falls from the sky. A deer stumbles upon that object, but before it can run away, a tentacle-like entity attacks the deer from behind. Ruth and Harry are traveling to camp in the woods. Both of them are awaiting the adventure ahead. They stop at a local fast food restaurant for burgers. Ruth is trying to memorize the names of the flowers and plants she might find in the forest. Harry jokes about how he knows the names of most flowers. A kid, who works at the restaurant, comes and asks both of them if they want him to take any of their trash away. The kid seems quite anxious and nervous. He asks them if they saw the red star come down, to which Ruth and Harry have no idea what he is talking about. When Ruth and Harry reach the ridge trail, Ruth gets worried about camping, as she hasn't been gone too deep in the woods. Harry assures her that he has camped like this multiple times, and everything would be all right. As they walk to the camping spot, Ruth already feels as if there's a third presence. Ruth sets up the tent, and Harry prepares food for the night. While they eat, they have a lovely conversation, like they normally do. During that night, Ruth wakes up and goes outside to answer nature's call, but she suddenly gets scared by the deer that was seen earlier. The next morning, Harry has a surprise for Ruth. He takes her further down the woods and surprises her with a beautiful sea view. Ruth is mesmerized by the beauty of the ocean. Harry begins to say that it has been 6 years since they got into a relationship, and before he met Ruth, he wasn't sure what he needed in his life. Harry admits that he didn't know what he was doing until he met Ruth. She completes him. Harry adds that he still hasn't figured out what he wants to do with his life, but he definitely wants Ruth to be by his side. Harry takes out a beautiful ring from his pocket and proposes to Ruth. Ruth, who isn't ready for marriage, suffers from a panic attack, something that has been with her for many years. Ruth apologizes to Harry and says that she isn't ready for marriage yet. Harry is heartbroken, but says that it's perfectly fine if Ruth feels that way. Ruth says that her rejecting the proposal has nothing to do with Harry, but Harry doesn't want to talk about it anymore. Later that evening, Ruth asks Harry why he proposed to her, when he knows how she feels about marriage. When Harry replies that Ruth's parents having a divorce in the past has nothing to do with their relationship, Ruth demands a clear explanation. Harry says Ruth's parents' separation has given her trauma and more anxiety than she should have. Ruth replies that Harry will never understand what she has to go through every single day. Ruth wakes up the next day and can't find Harry around. Harry has left a note for Ruth in which he states that he has gone for a walk to clear his head and that he won't be long. Ruth goes on a walk of her own and tries calling her therapist so that she can clear her thoughts too, but she can't find any phone service. Ruth moves further and finds the same deer she saw earlier. It is completely covered in some black substance and passed away. Ruth is grossed out by it, and Harry arrives soon enough to console her. Harry tells Ruth that the deer might have suffered from an unknown virus. Later that night, Harry searches in Ruth's medical book and finds the virus, which might have affected that deer. Ruth worries that the virus might get to them as well, but Harry believes that it's impossible. When Harry tries to get close to Ruth and touches her, he pulls himself back, knowing what happened last time. Ruth tells Harry that she still loves him and wants to be around him, and that Harry should feel the same way about her. She further states that she might be against the idea of marriage right now, but that doesn't mean that she is going to stop loving Harry. Harry is relieved by this and apologizes if he made her uneasy in some way. Both of them make out, ensuring that they still have strong feelings for each other. The next morning, Harry prepares breakfast, and Ruth feels like taking a long walk before having anything to eat. She wanders around and finds the flowers she was reading about before coming up for camping. She observes a cave nearby and finds something bluish inside. She enters it and finds a puddle of a blue substance. Having witnessed so much weirdness during this camping adventure, Ruth is confused by what she has just found. Ruth turns around and lets out a loud scream as if she has seen something extremely nerve-wracking. Harry worries that Ruth has gone for a long time now and decides to find her. When he does, he finds Ruth to be in a disturbed state. Ruth claims that she is all right and apologizes to Harry for keeping him waiting. Ruth remains in a state that has Harry worrying for her. When Harry wakes up in the middle of the night, he doesn't find Ruth alongside him. He goes out and looks around for her. All of a sudden, Ruth appears from behind with Harry's knife. Ruth says that she thought she heard an animal approaching them and was worried it would attack. Ruth doesn't sleep the entire night and is definitely shaken up by something. She doesn't show any interest when Harry is preparing a meal and talking about his university. Ruth apologizes for behaving strangely as of late and admits that she hasn't been herself during the entire trip. Ruth says that she has given much thought to their marriage and thinks that Harry is right. They are not like Ruth's parents. They would stand a much better chance as a couple than Ruth's parents. Ruth shares that she now wants to marry Harry and wants him to propose to her, just like he did near the beautiful sea view. Harry is overjoyed, to the point where he couldn't ask for anything more. Both of them reach the site where Harry proposed to Ruth before. Harry tries proposing to Ruth one more time, and Ruth accepts happily. Harry puts a ring on Ruth's finger and is beyond elated. They make out passionately afterward. Things soon take a drastic turn when Ruth violently hits Harry and pushes him off the cliff to his eventual demise. Not wanting to wait for anything, Ruth runs for her life, but it doesn't do her any good. She soon passes out due to severe exhaustion. Soon, a man named Ray and his wife, Vive, arrive and help Ruth out. Ruth has hurt herself pretty bad. Ray tries calling 911, but he can't get proper signal. Vive suggests that all three of them set up a tent and stay the night. Ruth refuses to tell them anything when they ask her about how she ended up the way she did and chooses to remain silent. Vive tries one more time to elicit information from Ruth. Vive tries asking Ruth about when she came to the woods and who she came along with. Ruth replies that she doesn't remember anything. Vive asks Ruth about her past life or any of her hobbies. She asks this as an attempt to help Ruth recover her present memory. But in reality, Ruth is perfectly fine. Ruth only answers that she likes to surf a lot and says nothing more. Vive goes to Ray and tells him that she finds Ruth to be weird and thinks that something might be wrong with her. Ray says that they can't do anything yet, as they have to wait till the morning to take Ruth to the nearest hospital. Ruth, from behind, picks up a knife and points toward them. Vive and Ray still have no idea why Ruth is behaving in this peculiar manner. Out of the blue, Harry arrives and begins to mock Ruth for having found new friends. Ruth is stunned to see Harry in a normal condition, as if nothing had happened to him. Ruth runs away, and Ray warns Harry to stay where he is and not to proceed further. Harry doesn't listen to him. Ray goes to punch him, but Harry attacks him with a sword that is physically attached to his hand. It's clear that he isn't human. Vive goes to find Ruth, and soon, Ray follows them. Vive trembles in fear as Ray is no longer alive, and Harry is actually controlling him with his tentacle. Harry terminates Vive instantly as well. Harry furiously asks Ruth how she found out that he wasn't human. Ruth, who is scared to death by Harry, says that she found the real Harry dead and tied up in a cocoon in the cave. Ruth suffered from a panic attack after witnessing that, and later remained numb when she knew that the Harry she was with was not a human. Harry says that he has messed up his mission ever since coming to Earth. To Ruth's shock, the imposter is actually an alien. Harry decides to finish off Ruth, but before he can take her out, he unintentionally stops himself. He doesn't know why he hesitated, so he tries killing her again. He is again hesitant to kill Ruth. The alien has not only imitated the physical appearance of Harry, but it has also absorbed every single past memory and behavior. So, Harry's passionate love for Ruth is stopping the alien from killing her. The alien quickly starts confusing Harry's feelings for his own. Meanwhile, Rush takes advantage of the situation and runs away from him. Desperate to be close to her, the imposter Harry follows happily. Ruth, in her defense, attacks the imposter Harry with her knife, but it doesn't affect him. The alien has healing capabilities. The imposter Harry wants to spend the rest of his life with Ruth. But first, he wants to show her something. He takes Ruth by the sea, and Ruth notices a shark swimming close to the shore. Ruth is baffled to see that the imposter Harry's spaceship, which was kept invisible, was near the sea all this time. The imposter Harry says that Ruth should have a fresh start with him and leave the planet with him soon. The imposter Harry assures her that more aliens like him will be taking over the Earth soon, and Ruth should leave with him right away. Before she could say anything, Ruth stabs the imposter Harry, which causes him to bleed, and jumps into the sea. The imposter Harry follows her, but because of his blood, the shark attacks him and devours him. Ruth runs back into the woods, but the imposter Harry soon comes out and begins to heal. Ruth suffers from a panic attack again. Luckily for her, she had one last tablet left to help her with the panic attack. The tentacle of the imposter Harry attaches to Ruth from behind and begins to absorb her. Back in the cave, the imposter Harry has tied up Ruth in a cocoon. He says that Ruth could have made it easier for them, but she chose not to. He will now show her the purest form of love by changing himself into an imposter Ruth. Ruth thinks about ways to escape from there and remembers that the alien also absorbs the past memories of a human. Ruth also remembers that she doesn't have any of her medicine left. Ruth begins to yell out her past family traumas and anxieties at the imposter Ruth, who begins to suffer from a severe panic attack. Completely exhausted and on the verge of passing out, the imposter Ruth falls down. Ruth attacks her with a large stone and leaves immediately. Even though the imposter Ruth is injured fatally, she begins to heal miraculously. As Ruth is leaving in her car, the radio begins to play on its own, and the imposter Ruth addresses Ruth through it. She warns Ruth about everything that would be happening to her in the future. Soon enough, more red objects begin to emerge and fall from the sky, signaling the arrival of more aliens on Earth.